So, so good morning. Today we'll be talking about a new topic in genetics and molecular biology, that is RNA types and structure. Now, what this topic will be covering and what we are discussing. In previous lectures, we have already covered our portion of DNA replication, and how that mechanism is going about, how that repair pathway has been going about. So now our focus will be to go to the next topic, that is our transcription. But before going to that topic, before talking about transcription, let us first talk about what is RNA. One should be able to understand the RNA molecule first, and then we can talk about how that RNA is being synthesized by the DNA. So this particular lecture is focused on providing you the basic understanding of very basic concepts, that what are RNA. You should be well versed that what are the bonds that are being formed when an RNA polymerization is taking place, how DNA can act as a template for synthesizing the RNA molecule, what type of RNA molecules are present in our cell, what type of RNA molecules, how many type of RNA molecules are present inside the cell. Then, after knowing that what type of RNA molecules are present, one should be able to understand that what are the functions of those RNA molecules, how they are essential for our normal cellular responses. So, in nutshell, the main learning objectives of this particular lecture will be to impart you the understanding that what are the structures of those RNA molecules, how many type of RNA molecules are present, and exactly what functions they are performing. So that by the end of the lecture, you should be able to understand that these are the RNA molecules that are mediating the role of transferring the genetic information in terms of expression of proteins. Whatever the information is coded in the DNA, it has to be expressed in terms of protein. And when I'm talking about the coding part, I'm talking about the genomic region, I'm talking about the genes. Now those genes, as per the central dogma, has to give rise to a protein. Now how that protein expression is performed, the intermediate molecules which are formed are RNA molecules. So we understand that based on our concept of central dogma, that these particular RNA molecules are very essential in protein synthesis, and the formation of these RNA molecules from DNA is called as transcription. So we will be focusing on ribonucleotides in this particular lecture. So let us begin the basic understanding of ribonucleic acid. Now what is RNA? RNA is ribonucleic acid. Everybody knows that that's called as ribonucleic acid. DNA is called as deoxyribonucleic acid. So it's clear that I'm not using the word deoxy. Why? Because simply if you look at the structure of this particular RNA molecule, or single RNA, complete RNA molecule with a polymer of nucleotide, you look at the single ribonucleotide. Now that single ribonucleotide has a pentose sugar called as ribose sugar. We are not calling it as deoxyribose. Now we are calling it as ribose sugar. So let us look how this particular ribose sugar is looking, how this particular ribose sugar is focusing. Now look at this jam code. This is a kind of a basic structure of a ribonucleotide. A ribonucleotide contains a pentose sugar which is attached to a base molecule. Base molecule, suppose this is a nitrogenous base. A is what? Adenine. Adenine is what? It's a purine. And at this particular carbon, there are three molecules of phosphate groups which are present. There are three molecules of phosphate group which are present. This is suppose the first nucleotide that is going on. We call it as nucleotide. Why? Simply because it contains three parts. It contains a phosphate group, it contains a pentose sugar which we are calling it as ribose sugar, it contains a nitrogenous base. In this condition, we are taking the example of adenine. Now this is what a ribose sugar. This is a ribose sugar. Now, if we talk about the position of this particular part, this is your first carbon, this is your second carbon, this is your third carbon, this is your fourth, and this one is your fifth carbon, right? So what is the difference between DNA and RNA? That is the major thing that one should be able to understand. The first difference is in the nomenclature, right? We are calling it as deoxyribose, and we are here using a sugar only ribose. So there is no deoxy. That means at 2' position there will be a presence of OH group. There will be a presence of OH group, as well as at 3 carbon there will be a presence of OH group. Whereas in DNA this particular oxygen is not present. That's why we are calling it as deoxy. No, right. In this particular configuration we are calling it as ribose or RNA. That is the first difference. Then the second difference is we have four bases, four nitrogenous bases, that is A, T, G, C in DNA. Whereas in RNA, when RNA is formed using DNA as a template, there is no incorporation of thymine. We have only A, U, G, C. Wherever the thymine is to be used to be present, then it has been replaced by uracil. So these are the two remarkable changes or the two remarkable differences when we are comparing the DNA with the RNA molecule. Now, suppose this is the first nucleotide. I told you we are talking about the formation of RNA. Now, suppose the RNA is being formed. Then what is RNA? RNA is a polymer of these nucleotides. What are these nucleotides? These nucleotides are called as ribonucleotides. These are called as ribonucleotides, which are given with a short form of NTP, nucleotide triphosphate, because three phosphate molecules are attached. So what kind of nucleotide are there? Ribonucleotides. So it's a polymer of ribonucleotide. Now the definition is still not complete. It will be completed. See, the basic difference is what? Basic difference is providing the right information in such a manner that the listener is completely convinced that yes, you have the technical understanding of that particular topic. Now let us complete the information. Let us complete the definition. Now suppose this is the first nucleotide and there is another nucleotide which is coming to form a polymer. Polymer is what? Multiple nucleotides will be coming to form a chain. Now suppose there is another base, that is G. So it is a guanosine nucleotide, and then here there is a carbon, and there are three phosphate groups of this particular nucleotide. Fine. So this is again 5' position of carbon, 5' carbon. Now how this will bind? How this will bind? This particular OH group of 3' of the existing nucleotide will be binding with the phosphate group of the 5' carbon of the incoming nucleotide. Thereby, a bond is formed between this particular position and this particular phosphate group, and there is a release of two phosphate molecules which are removed. So there is a bond. Now you see that you have managed to form a bond between A and this is a bond which you have formed, and a G. Now next might be T, then again that form will be formed, and so on. The length continues and the chain grows. Now what is this bond? What is this bond? This bond is called as phosphodiester bond. Why? Because a phosphate molecule is there. Phosphate, that means an acid, and then is an OH group. Then there is an ester bond. This is called as phosphodiester bond. In what, amongst what carbon that this particular phosphodiester bond is being formed? It is being formed between 3' carbon, 3' OH of the existing nucleotide and the 5' of the phosphate of the incoming nucleotide. So this particular bond is 3', 5' phosphodiester linkage or phosphodiester bond. So how will you, so now based on this understanding, how will you define RNA? RNA is the polymer of ribonucleotides which are joined by 3' to 5' phosphodiester linkage, and that's how a technical person, be it from biotechnology or be it from any other applied sciences field, should define it. What people say, what is RNA? RNA is ribonucleotide, it's a polymer of ribonucleotide. Yes, you're right, but then again you have to add on certain information that showcases your technical skills, and that is how you define this. RNA is a polymer of ribonucleotide joined by 3' to 5' phosphodiester linkage, and this is in nutshell the complete definition of this particular RNA molecule. So we understood that there is a basic difference between DNA and RNA in terms of sugar, in terms of uracil, and it's a polymer of monomeric nucleotides which are joined by 3' to 5' phosphodiester linkage, and this is how the growing chain of RNA is being shown. What is being shown here? This is a sugar. There is 3' OH, this is 2' OH. Now 3' oxygen forms a bond with the incoming phosphate group of the 5' carbon, thereby forming a phosphodiester bond, and this is how the chain grows. And the nitrogenous bases are linked to the first carbon of this particular sugar group. And there is no T, no thymine, there is always uracil. There is always uracil. And what is this bond? What is the bond between the nitrogenous group and this carbon? That bond is called as glycosidic bond. That bond is called as glycosidic bond. So when see, there are certain similarities also in terms of DNA and RNA, because the polymerization is going only via phosphodiester linkage, and that too by 3' and 5'. The same thing happens in DNA also. So these bonds, this bond, phosphodiester bond, is also called as the backbone of that particular RNA molecule. Fine. So next question comes. So okay, we understood that there the formation of RNA is this, the definition of RNA is this, but where the RNA is present? See, in eukaryotes, RNA is present both in nucleus as well as cytoplasm. Why? Because RNA is formed from DNA. So in order to form from a DNA molecule which is present inside the nucleus, is present inside the nucleus, the RNA molecules are also present inside the nucleus. Then there are certain types which perform their functions while in the cytoplasm. So in eukaryotes, their distribution is present in both nucleus and cytoplasm, whereas in prokaryotes there is only cytoplasm. There is no cellular organelle, there is no nuclear membrane, there is no defined nucleus, so it is present inside the cytoplasm. So these are the small basic concepts or small tricks that are being asked in different competitions, but you have to clearly understand that what is the logic behind that. Then when we say that where the synthesis of RNA is taking place, is it the synthesis is taking place in cytoplasm for cytoplasmic RNA and nucleus for nuclear RNA? No, the synthesis of RNA always occurs inside the nucleus. After formation of RNA, if that RNA is destined for cytoplasm, it will cross the nuclear membrane and will go to cytoplasm. If it is destined for nucleus, then it will remain in the nucleus. There is no exception to it, whether in prokaryotes or eukaryotes, apart from viruses. Now, viruses, when they infect the host cell, they inject the genomic RNA, and that RNA is capable of replicating itself, of multiplying its number, of increasing its RNA molecule inside cytoplasm using RNA-dependent RNA polymerase, using an enzyme called as RNA-dependent RNA polymerase, which is coded by viral proteins, which is coded by virus genome. But in prokaryotes or eukaryotes, this synthesis of RNA is dependent upon DNA-dependent RNA polymerase. So that's why it occurs only in the nucleus. And size-wise, see, the DNA is very large. It contains somewhere around 4.3 million nucleotides. But when we are talking about RNA molecules, these are very short molecules. Their size ranges up to 12,000 nucleotides. So the differences is in terms of size, in terms of configuration, in terms of the bases that are being present in this particular among these molecules, that it's DNA and RNA. Then see, structure wise, if you look at this picture, that this is a double helical structure of DNA. Now DNA is able to form a double helical structure. Fine. Whereas if we talk about RNA molecule, now this RNA molecule, when we are talking about this thing, it remains as single strand. Two RNA molecules are not combining to give you a helical appearance or to give you a double-stranded appearance. So that is again a basic difference, that it does not form any kind of double-stranded structure. Fine. Then thymine is absent, and we have seen that there is no formation, although there is no formation of double-strand RNA molecule. But if there is a DNA molecule, a complementary RNA molecule can go and form a hybrid molecule. And this hybrid molecule is called as RNA-DNA hybrid. So in terms of double-stranded, it can form complementary bond. As being complementary, it can form bonds with the parent or the template complementary DNA. But alone, it cannot form any kind of double-stranded structure. It remains in a single-stranded structure. So see, this property, when we are aware of this property, that yes, RNA molecule can go and bind to its complementary strand of DNA, forming a double-stranded structure called as DNA-RNA hybrid, which is relatively very stable. The only condition is that this particular DNA should be in single-stranded form. And this concept is utilized in certain kind of diagnosis, in many kinds of assays, be it chromatin assay, be it chip assay, be it inflorescence hybridization or fluorescence in situ hybridization, FISH. That is the concept that is being followed. Fine. So this is the difference in terms of when we are talking about the structure of RNA. That is the difference. Then apart from this, what are there? We have studied the complete structure, how it is formed, what is the 3' OH group, what is the 5' phosphate group, how that particular backbone is being formed. Then let's talk about a critical part, that is nitrogenous base. Now there are two types of nitrogenous bases, as there was in the case of the DNA. What are those? pyrimidines and purines. Pyrimidines and purines. So when we look at this particular structure, these are purines, these are pyrimidines. Purines are what? The double aromatic ring structure called as adenine and guanine, whereas the pyrimidines which are present in RNA are uracil and cytosine. And if you see, the only difference between uracil and cytosine is in terms of the keto and the amine group which is attached here. So structurally they are almost same. But there is a difference in terms of the groups or the functional groups that are being attached. Right? Then, when we are talking about the phosphate group, I showed you in the Jamboard that there are 3 phosphate molecules which are present, and when there is a joining, the 2 molecules are removed, and the first molecule for phosphate is forming a bond with the 3' carbon. The first molecule is forming a bond with the 3' carbon, and the sugar which we are talking about is ribose sugar. And how it compares to deoxyribose? See, on the second prime carbon, there is an availability of what? A hydroxyl group. There is an availability of hydroxyl group. But when we are talking about deoxyribose at the 2 prime, there is no oxygen. So the question comes, when an incoming nucleotide is approaching, it can form a bond with 3 prime and 2 prime both. But majority of the time, it forms a bond with 3 prime OH, giving rise to a stable RNA molecule. And same happens in case of DNA. So based on this very basic understanding that how RNA molecule is looking, what is the structure of RNA molecule, let us now focus on how many types of RNA are there. So we are already aware, it's very common that there are 3 types of RNA molecule that we talk about. It is ribosomal RNA, mRNA, that is messenger RNA, tRNA, that is transfer RNA. Apart from this, there are multiple RNAs that are present, that is small nuclear RNA. Then there are miRNA called as microRNA. Then there is RNA interference mediated by siRNA, small interfering RNA. So these are very, very small short stretches of RNA molecules which perform very critical functions. So let us now focus on these particular RNAs, and among that pool, the most prominent that is being studied and which performs the major function that mediates the central dogma of transferring the genetic information into protein is mRNA. Now, what is mRNA? Among the total percentage, mRNA constitutes about 5% of the RNA only. If you are talking that the RNA percentage is 100%, then the relative distribution is up to 5% of mRNA, up to 10 to 15% of tRNA, and up to 80% of your ribosomal RNA, that we'll see in subsequent slides. So when we are talking about mRNA, what is mRNA? It's a stretch of ribonucleotides, a polymer of ribonucleotides, which constitutes of 5% of the cell. Now, what are the characteristics of this particular RNA? If we talk about the characteristic of RNA, we should be able to understand first that how exactly RNA molecule is formed. So let's look at this particular structure itself. Now, this is a mRNA molecule which is formed from a DNA sequence. Now, this mRNA is formed from a DNA sequence. Now, what kind of DNA sequence? Is it a coding sequence? It is a gene sequence, or it's a non-coding intronic section? So in eukaryotes, it is formed from gene which contains both exons and introns. Whereas in prokaryotes, it is again formed from a gene which does not contain any kind of intronic region. So in that scenario, it's a polycistronic mRNA. Whereas in eukaryotes, it's a mixture of exons and introns. So it requires further processing. Now, first let us look at the basic structure of RNA. What are the modifications that happens inside? So once this RNA molecules has been synthesized from the DNA, you see this is the 5' region, this is a 3' region. Fine. And this AUG marks the starting codon of a gene. So before this starting codon, there is a small stretch which will never be translated into a protein, and this region is called as leader sequence or 5' UTR, untranslated region. Whereas the same scenario is happening at 3' also, we call it as trailer region, because this region is coming after the stop codon, and we call it as 3' UTR. So you see, the actual coding region which will lead to the formation of protein is this particular region, which is called as coding sequence. So there is a presence of 5' UTR, there is a presence of 3' UTR. Then at the 5 prime position, there is a guanine which is present. There is a guanine which is present. So at that particular G, there is an addition of methyl group. There is an addition of methyl group at 7th position. There is an addition of methyl group at 7th position, which we call it as 7-methyl guanosine. So this 7-methyl guanosine triphosphate forms a kind of a cap, on this particular mRNA. And apart from this cap, the other modification that is present is at the 3 prime end, which is the multiple addition of adenine nucleotide forming a poly-A tail. See, there is a continuous stretch of AAA. Now this is called as poly-A tail. So the mRNA is characterized by what? The mRNA is characterized by 5 prime cap and 3 prime poly-A tail. The 5 prime UTR and 3 prime UTR, in between that there is a coding sequence which will lead to the formation of RNA, formation of protein molecules. Now, what is the need? Why there is so much need? Why there is need of so much modifications? See, what is the function of 5 prime cap? When this is a property of our cell. See, whenever there is a single strand of nucleic acid, it is prone to degradation. It is prone to degradation by the proteins or the enzymes which are present inside the cell, called as exonuclease. Now there are two types of exonuclease. One which can recognize the 5 prime end and can degrade the mRNA molecule from this direction, from 5 prime to 3 prime. Whereas there are other type of exonucleases which can recognize the 3 prime end, and then they can cleave this RNA molecule from 3 prime to 5 prime. So the first function of this cap is to prevent the degradation of mRNA, thereby providing the stability. Whereas the second function is when the ribosomes will be coming to bind to this RNA for protein synthesis, this cap acts as an adapter molecule for binding of this particular RNA, for binding of that particular ribosome. Fine. So this is the main function. These are the main functions of these two modifications that we have discussed. That it protects from 5 prime exonuclease, it protects from 3 prime exonuclease. Okay. So next is what is the function of this coding sequence? How this coding sequence is formed? See, when we are talking about a eukaryotic mRNA. When we are talking about the eukaryotic mRNA, now that eukaryotic mRNA in itself, how it is formed, let us see. This eukaryotic mRNA, suppose we have a double-stranded DNA. This is our starting codon. And this is our stop codon. Stop codon. Now, in between this, there are 2 exons which are present, 2 exons, and between 2 exons there is an intronic region which will not code for anything. Now, from this template, there is a formation of mRNA. And here we have a poly-A tail, multiple residues of poly-A tail. We have a cap here. Fine. Now, this particular region will contain exon, intron, and exon also. So in mRNA, there are 2 exonic regions which are present, and there is 1 intronic region. Now in this state, this mRNA molecule is called as pre-mRNA. It is not yet matured. Pre-mRNA. It is not yet matured. Why? Because there is an intronic region. It will not lead to any kind of protein formation. Why? Because when the ribosomes will be coming, they will be removed here, because this region codes for nothing. So what we have to do? We have to put it into mature form. So what will happen? There will be certain modification which will result in an mRNA with poly-A tail and cap, and now there will be only 2 regions that will be joined, that is exonic region. Okay, so what is happening? This particular region will be looped out, and it will be degraded and removed from this particular fragment, thereby resulting in mature mRNA. Now this is called as mature mRNA. Why? Because it contains only the exonic region. Here that is joined to result in the formation of protein. A continuous stretch of coding sequence. This happens, of course, this happens only in eukaryotes. Why? Because in prokaryotes, there is no intronic region. They contain a continuous stretch of exons, or you call that cistrons. These are all are coding. So whatever the mRNA they are forming, that will lead to the formation of functional proteins. So there is no removal of intronic region, which is technically called as splicing. There is no RNA splicing. So that is the thing that one should be able to understand. That is the thing that one should be able to understand, that there is no splicing in prokaryotes, and in eukaryotes there is first formation of pre-mRNA, which is further processed to give rise to a mature mRNA. And that mature mRNA acts as a template for synthesis of protein, and the adapter molecule that reads the mRNA and brings the amino acid from the pool to form a protein stretch, that adapter molecule is your tRNA. That adapter molecule is your tRNA. So before going to that, let us focus on the next particular RNA molecule, that is ribosomal RNA. Now the name suggests ribosomal. That means it will lead to the formation of ribosome. It is found inside the ribosome in the cytoplasm. So once this particular RNA is formed, it goes and binds to different proteins to form a structural unit called as ribosomes, which are actually the site of protein synthesis. And not only that, these particular RNA molecules are at the catalytic site where this particular activity is being performed. Fine. So these ribosomal RNAs, or the ribosomes, are measured. The constituents are measured in terms of Sydberg's unit. What is Sydberg unit? In terms of the rate of sedimentation. When we put this into the centrifugation or the sedimentation, ultracentrifugation, then allow them to sediment, then this particular RNA molecule is measured in terms of Sydberg unit, which is denoted by S, and it constitutes almost 80% of the total RNA. Now, in prokaryotes and eukaryotes, the ribosomes are different. How? Let us see here structurally. This prokaryotic ribosome is of 70S. That is the measuring unit. That is 70. S means rate of sedimentation, 70S. Now, this is made up of two units, a large and a small subunit. Collectively, the molecular weight is of 25 lakh Dalton. 25 lakh. Now, when we split it, there is a large subunit, there is a small subunit. The 70S is split into 50 and 30. Now, this is the confusion that students generally have. See, 50 and 30, if you combine, it should be 80. But here, we are talking about not of mathematical addition, but we are talking about the rate of sedimentation. When individually these molecules are allowed to sediment, that give rise to 50S, and that is being rated as 30. But when combined and then they allowed to sediment, they are sedimenting at 70. So the 70S is bifurcated into 50 and 30S, and the 25 lakh is now broken into 16 and 9 lakh respectively. Now, when we talk about the large subunit, what is there in this particular dome? What is there in this particular large subunit? Now, there will be ribosomal RNA and proteins. So there are 34 different kind of proteins. And what are the RNA molecules? There are two types of ribosomal RNA molecules, which we called as very small RNA molecule, that is 5S rRNA, 5S ribosomal RNA made up of only 120 nucleotides. And the other larger RNA is 23S ribosomal RNA. 23S ribosomal RNA. Whereas in small subunit, there is only one RNA molecule, that is 16S ribosomal RNA, which is very, very conserved. And you must have seen that whenever there are evolutionary studies that are focusing on phylogenetic examination, which are focusing on those genes which provide the phylogenetic relationship, then this particular RNA molecule, that is 16S RNA, is extensively used in determining the prokaryotic evolution history, prokaryotic phylogenetic studies. So this is the complete structure of this ribosome and rRNA in prokaryotes. Then what is the difference between eukaryotes? Let us see. Then eukaryotic ribosome is called as 80S. There we were calling it as 70S. Here it is 80S. Now this 80S further bifurcates into 60 and 40. 60S and 40S. The collective molecular weight of the ribosome is 42 lakhs. When it is bifurcated, the large subunit is 28 lakh, whereas the small subunit is 14 lakh. Now, in this large subunit, what are the constituents? There are almost 49 different proteins that are present along with 3 types of rRNA molecule in the large subunit. What are those 3 types? One is 5.8s, 5.8s, 160 nucleotide. Another is same conserved as was in prokaryote, that is 5s with 120 nucleotide. So you see in evolution also from prokaryote to eukaryote, there is a molecule which is highly conserved, has not changed, that is 5s ribosomal RNA, and that is 120 nucleotide. Then the largest of the rRNA molecule is 28s, made up of 4700 nucleotides. And in the smaller subunit, we had 16s RNA in prokaryote, whereas in eukaryote, we have 18s RNA. And when we talk about eukaryotic evolutionary history, eukaryotic phylogenetic trait, then this 18s ribosomal RNA mediated sequencing is extensively used for this particular for these particular formation of ribosomal RNA, and is extensively used for studying the phylogenetic relationship. So what in nutshell the summary of ribosomal RNA? We have prokaryote, we have eukaryote. We have prokaryote 70s. 70s is bifurcated into 50s and 30s. In 50s, we have 2 RNA molecules, that is 5s and 23s. And here in small molecule, small subunit, we have 16s. Whereas when we are talking about eukaryote, this particular eukaryote, we have 60s and 40s. This 60s has 3 RNA molecules, that is 5.8, 5s and 28s, whereas small has 18s. So that is the complete bifurcation of ribosomal RNA. That is the complete bifurcation of ribosomal RNA. Then let us focus on tRNA. Let us now focus on tRNA. We had already discussed 2 forms, that is mRNA and rRNA. Now we are focusing on another very crucial type of RNA, that is tRNA. tRNA is called as transfer RNA. Why the word transfer? Why there was a need to call it as transfer? Because of its function, what it performs, what it is doing. We have a template mRNA. We have amino acids in the cytoplasm. The genetic information is coded on mRNA. I have to design a certain molecule that will read this mRNA, that will read what is written on this mRNA, and sequentially it will bring one amino acid to the place, and next and next and so on. Sequentially it will give rise to the formation of that particular protein. Sequentially it should give rise to the formation of that particular protein, right? So who performs this function? Who brings the amino acid? And that molecule is called as tRNA. That's why the term coined as transfer RNA. And this transfer RNA is made up, tRNA is made up of 74 to 95 nucleotide, and it constitutes to 10 to 15% of the total RNA that is present inside the cell. And this is the form which is actually called as soluble RNA, because it is present inside the cytoplasm also. It is a kind of a soluble form of RNA. And since it is reading this particular mRNA molecule, so it is also called as adapter molecule, which is acting as an adapter for mRNA, thereby providing the information which is stored in mRNA to the protein expression, So although so how many type of tRNA should be present inside the cell? The question is, how many type of tRNA molecules should be present inside the cell? See, we have 20 amino acid, so minimum of 20 tRNA should be present, but eventually it comes to 31 to 32 tRNA molecules that are present inside the cell. Then let us look at the structure. See, clearly there should be no confusion. There is a DNA molecule, from which the RNA is formed. Whether this RNA is mRNA, whether this RNA is ribosomal RNA, whether this RNA is tRNA, all these 3 will be found from the DNA molecule itself. Likewise, similarly, this tRNA is formed from DNA, and when it is formed, it's a kind of a linear chain. But after being formed, it changes the shape from linear to a semi-double-stranded kind of structure. Why semi? See, there is a representation in front of you which is representing the structure of tRNA. This is the structure of tRNA. This structure is called as clover leaf model. Why it is folded in this manner? First of all, let us see this structure in detail. Here there is a 5' end. Here there is a 5' end, and the chain continues, went in the direction, made certain loops, and then ended here at 3'. So initially it was a straight line, a linear strand which had a 5 prime and had a 3 prime. Somehow it folded to give a clover leaf like structure. Why? How? See, there are stretches of complementary between this strand. There are stretches of complementary between this strand. How it is being performed? Let me just show you via Jamboard, then it will be much more clear to you. Now, suppose there is a single strand which is formed, and we have 5 prime here, and we have 3 prime here. We have 3 prime here. Suppose it's a strand. I am having a fevistick, a glue. I have a glue. What I did in this thread, suppose this is a thread. In this thread, I put a glue here. I put a glue here. Fine. Then I put a glue here, and I again put a dot of glue here. What will happen? These two might combine with themselves, and it will lead to the formation of this type of structure. It will lead to the formation of this type of structure. Why? Because of the glue that is present, these two ends join themselves. These two ends join themselves and form the 5 prime 3 prime here. So what is happening? What is happening? The folding is being formed. There is a fold. There is a fold which was initially a single strand. Now it has become a double strand. If we zoom this particular part, then you will see that there is a loop, and the places where the glue was attached, that has come into a double stranded thing, and then again the stretch is going on. Fine. So this is the same thing that is happening in tRNA. This is the same thing that is happening in tRNA. How it is going on? There is a complete stretch, the 3 prime, there is a 5 prime. This particular linear tRNA of primer structure have certain complementary sequences in between. There is a complementary sequence. How it is a complementary sequence? Suppose we have here A, U, G, C, G. Its complementary sequence is present here. Its complementary sequence is present here, that is U, A, C, G, C. Now these two are complementary. These two are complementary, and because of its complementary nature, it may result in forming a double strand bond, which will form a loop and then again a bond. And here, this sequence is lying here. This sequence is present here, and they will form a bond. This is how the primary structure has folded to give you a clover leaf like structure. To give you a clover leaf like structure, which is here. These are the complementary sequences. See, GCG is combining with CGC. Here CUC, GAG. These are again complementary. So these are forming bond, and the remaining sequences are forming a loop. And this is how the secondary structure is formed. Now, what are the functions of this? Why it is folded? Now, this particular 3 prime OH, is responsible for attaching with the amino acid molecule. Look at this structure. Look at this representation. This is 3 prime. 3 prime is forming a bond with the amino acid. So it is responsible for bringing the amino acid from cytoplasm. And when an amino acid is attached to this particular 3 prime, there is an enzyme which is required to mediate this formation of bond, and that is called as amino-acyl tRNA synthetase. Amino-acyl tRNA synthetase, which will lead to the formation of bond between the amino acid and 3 prime OH. And combinedly, this structure is called as amino-acyl tRNA. Now, the next question. Who decides out of 20 amino acid which amino acid should be bought here? Which amino acid should be bought? Whether it should be methionine, it should be threonine, it should be serine. Which amino acid? Now, that is the function of this arm called as anticodon arm. This arm will read the mRNA. What is the triplet codon? A codon made up of 3 nucleotides. What is written here? We are saying that suppose it is written AUG. Suppose it is written AUG. That AUG will be read by this anticodon arm, and it will signal that it is written AUG. Now you have to bring methionine, and that's how the complete genetic code works that we had discussed. That's how the complete genetic code works. The anticodon arm is reading the genetic code, a single codon. It is thereby bringing the right amino acid of methionine, and that methionine will be binding the complete molecule will be binding in a ribosome unit and thereby leading to the formation of complete strand of protein, complete protein strand, polypeptide, that you will see in detail when we will be discussing regarding translation. So that is the function of your codon arm. But what about the other arms? Now this arm, this particular arm, what we are talking about, this particular arm is called as acceptor arm. This is called as anticodon. This we called as D loop, and this we called as T loop. So let us see what are the functions of these arms. When we are talking about acceptor arm, we have already discussed that it attaches to the amino acid. It attaches to the amino acid, the 3' end. Then in this arm, there are 7 complementary base pairs, and always remember that the end sequence which is present here, the end sequence which is present at the 3' end is always CCA, and it is conserved no matter what type of tRNA we are talking about. The terminus end of 3' will always contain CCA, and this A, that is adenine, is responsible for forming a bond with the amino acid. Fine, and there are 7 complementary bases that are being present here, and that's been narrated here, that what it is called, and that is called as amino acid tRNA. Fine. Then anticodon, we had already discussed that what it does, it actually reads the triplet codon which is present in the RNA, and because of its complementarity, because of the anticodon loop's complementarity, exact accurate amino acid is added on the tRNA, and the chain of proteins or the chain of polypeptide is synthesized in the ribosome. Then there are other 2 arms called as D arm and T arm. We call it as dihydrouracil arm and this T-cy-C arm. These both have specific functions. This DHU arm, actually, it brings the enzyme that is required for the attachment of amino acid to that particular acceptor arm. We are talking about this. The amino acid is bought here, the tRNA is here. The enzyme which is required is actually bought by this particular arm, the D loop, and it will bring the enzyme, and this enzyme will catalyze the reaction on the formation of this bond. Then there is T-cy-C arm. Now this is exactly opposite to the DHU arm. It contains pseudo-uridine residues. That's why we call it as T-cy-C arm. And it is involved in a structure providing the binding to the ribosome when the complete translation process is going on. That tRNA has to bind to that particular active site of the ribosome. That binding is initiated by this particular arm. Fine. Then let us discuss about the tertiary structure. Now, why I incorporated this information for you? See, we already know the primary structure. It is folded to give rise to a clover leaf-like model, right? And then that clover leaf-like model is a secondary structure, which again folds to give rise to a 3-dimensional structure. This is a 3-dimensional representation of tRNA, which actually works inside the cell. This is how it works inside the cell. The earlier version was a simplified version. This is a complete conformational tRNA, which actually working in bringing this particular amino acid at this end and reading with the anticodon loop. And this is a L-shaped structure, L for lion, L-shaped structure. And that's why the tertiary structure of tRNA resembles an L-shaped structure. Then, apart from these 3 classical, I told you there are multiple RNA molecules. Now let us have a glimpse of these RNA molecules. The one is small nuclear RNA. Now this small nuclear RNA, then when we had discussed that there is a requirement of removing intron from a polycystonic exon. This is pre-mRNA. We had discussed this in terms of eukaryotes, that this pre-mRNA goes for processing and leads to a mature mRNA, which contains only exons. So there is a removal of intron, and this removal of intron is called as splicing, and the protein machinery that performs this removal is called as spliceosome. So these small nuclear RNA molecules binds to different proteins and results in the formation of spliceosome, which is very much required in forming a mature RNA, and removing the intronic interspersed region sequence. So that is the function of small nuclear RNA. Then there is another category called as microRNA, miRNA. What are these microRNA? These are very short non-coding RNA molecules. Please remember, miRNA does not code for any protein. No, it's a short stretch of RNA molecule which is not coding for any kind of protein, but it is ubiquitous. It is present in all type of living organisms. It is present in all type of living organism, and you will see in the literature. If you read the literature, people have shown, the scientific intellect and the researchers has shown that these miRNA molecules are performing very major function in regulating plethora of genes. It's a regulatory RNA which performs the function of regulating the gene expression. It can regulate the gene expression of any kind of protein, any kind of gene. The rate of expression can be modulated. Fine. So that's what I have seen shown here, that what happens whenever there is a DNA, there is a RNA which is being formed, and RNA is leading to the formation of protein. But there are miRNA molecules which are very short stretch of RNA molecules that can act as regulator. They can inhibit the translation process. The mRNA will be formed, but there will be no protein product. There will be no protein product. So these single strand RNA molecule exert their regulatory effect by preventing the translation of protein, and they are being implicated in terms of cancer. They are implicated in terms of impaired autophagy, impaired apoptosis. There are multiple cellular processes which are being shown to be aberrant if this miRNA expression is high, and these miRNA is also being used as a investigating the therapeutic module, whether we can use this miRNA to as a therapeutic tool in curbing certain diseases, in curbing or mitigating certain disorders. Fine. Then there is a last category called as siRNA. Now this siRNA term is formed from small interfering RNA. That's why Si. Now you can see it's a small, that means a short stretch. Interfering, it must be interfering in something. It must be interfering in something. What it is interfering in? It is interfering in the expression of a gene. It is interfering in the expression of a gene. As a matter of fact, siRNA is responsible for gene silencing, for knocking down of a gene. How it is done? See, what is happening? Initially, a double-strand RNA molecule is formed, the siRNA pathway. Then there is an enzyme called as dicer, which cleaves this double-stranded RNA into small stretches. Then this double-strand RNA molecule, which is cleaved, binds to multiple proteomic complexes called as RNA-induced silencing complex, RISC, which we called as DROSA dicer molecules. And this particular RNA silencing molecule leads to the binds to the mRNA, which is responsible for the formation of protein, and after binding, it performs the cleavage, and thereby it breaks down this particular mRNA, which is actually responsible for the translated product or the protein formation. So thereby what it is doing, it is breaking down the mRNA. It is switching off the expression of protein, and that's what they do. The length is of 20-25 nucleotides, and that's what they do. Both miRNA and siRNA, they are being recognized from past 2 decades. Their huge investigation is going on in this particular area, and they have been continuously being explored for being a putative target for multiple drugs. That if by a drug we can inhibit this particular miRNA or siRNA, we can go for a therapeutic module. We can cure a particular disease. We can provide a putative treatment therapy, because these siRNA molecules are responsible for impairment. If we can inhibit this siRNA molecule, we can rectify the impairment. And in the other hand, people have shown that these miRNA molecules are also responsible for certain proper cellular processes, the normal cellular metabolism also. So there are 2 lines of defenses. There is dual-edged sword that we are talking about. Fine. And in addition, these siRNAs are extensively utilized to develop knockdowns in vivo and in vitro models both. This siRNA molecule is extensively used to create knockdown of certain proteins, knockdown of certain genes, so that in that particular cell the expression is not there. So this is what we have summarized today in the complete lecture, that what are the types of RNA molecules, what are the types of different types of RNA molecules, what is the structure of the RNA molecule. And for your reference, I have given here certain links that will lead you to the literature that one should read if you are interested in this particular topic. If you want to go for in-depth analysis of this particular topic, there are multiple platforms that are provided, the research papers, the books. There are multiple platforms that are showcasing this information in very in-depth detail. Fine. So let us discuss what we have done till now based on certain MCQs, because these MCQs are required to revamp your or recapitulate what you have understood. Which of the following constitute largest subunit of the ribosome? Which of the following constitute the largest subunit of the ribosome of 60S? Among the 60S in the eukaryote, which was the largest ribosome RNA? Whether it is 28, whether it is 5.8, whether it is 5. Now I leave it up to you. What was that? One should go through this particular PPT and they can understand this. Then which of the following RNA molecule is a soluble form? Then we had discussed that out of 3, which was the soluble form, that tRNA. When we are talking about the tRNA, how much percentage it is comprising, whether it is 5, it is 50, it is 15 or 20. What was the percentage of tRNA that we are talking about? When we are talking about at the 5' terminal capping region, we said that yes, at the 5' end there is guanosine, and that guanosine, a methyl group is being added, and it is added at a certain position. What was that position? What was that position? And what was the name of the secondary structure of tRNA? What was the name of that secondary structure of tRNA? Fine. Then let us discuss this 6th question at the last. First, focus on the 7th question. Which among the following is actually can be used for suppressing the gene expression that we had discussed just right now? Which among these is used for creating knockouts, or I should say knockdowns? Knockout is not a right word. I should say knockdown. Then what is the RNA fragment that we have used? We already know that you can decipher after reading this particular PPT. Then amino acid, when it is attaching to tRNA at the acceptor arm with the adenine residue, what is the 3' that is being there? It is a 3' phosphate, or is it 5' phosphate? Is it 3' OH or 5' OH? And whether that template mRNA, the template mRNA which is read from the adapter molecule, whether it is read by T arm, D arm, acceptor arm or anticodon arm, that you have to tell. Then the last question that we are talking about is how many bands will be observed in agarose gel electrophoresis? Agarose gel electrophoresis, where the separation of RNA molecule is taking place based on its size. How many molecules will be seen, or how many bands will be seen when we are loading pure eukaryotic RNA? So let us see in very short. Let us see in very short how. See, largest subunit of eukaryote is made up of 60S. Largest subunit is called as 60S. It contained 5S, it contained 5.8S, and it contained 20S RNA molecules, ribosomal RNA. Smaller subunit was of 640S, which had only one type, that is 18S rRNA. So overall, the ribosome of eukaryotes have 4 different types of RNA molecules. That means 4 different sizes. So when we are running on an agarose gel, and we are loading the pure eukaryotic RNA in this particular well, we will see these bands, only 4 bands: 28S, 18S, 5.8S and 5S. Why? Because these are the type of molecules, RNA molecules, which are present inside that particular eukaryotic ribosome. When we talk about prokaryote, there will be only 3 bands. So this is how you have to understand the question, and then you have to go for the answer of these analytical questions. So friends, students, this is all about for today's lecture. I thank you so much for your attention, for your kind attention. I hope that this particular lecture was fruitful to you. We'll come back again with the next lecture on the topic. Till then, please take care and stay safe.